Amateurs. I'll start again. No, I won't start again live stream because everything I just said was so offensive, I don't even want to repeat it. So there's a sense in which if we have a fight or flight response in our conflict, everything we know in this course goes out the window. Do you guys ever experience something like that? Yeah. A fight or flight response. Let's just do a quiz. Like, how good are we at recognizing when we are in a fight or flight response?
I consider more the freeze portion.
Or fawn. You know, when I say those two, I mean all four. Just don't want to say those 4 words every single time. So, our self-awareness, are we do we recognize that? Because as soon as we do that, we're in self-preservation mode. We're not thinking rationally, and all this teaching just goes out the window. You say, what do I do about that? We are often afraid of the feelings we might feel, and we'll do anything not to feel those feelings. And so we put up this armor to protect ourselves, and then what we said is the fight or flight, fawn, or freeze response will manifest itself on a spectrum either of a meltdown or a withdrawal. When I say withdrawal, I don't mean, where's my next alcoholic drink? I mean, withdrawing from the relationship, dismissing the person, okay? So, the problem with that is that's an expression of our brokenness. And all of us bring a degree of brokenness into the relationship. The problem with that is we're married to another broken person. Anybody here not married to a broken person? So true. The problem with being married to a non-broken person is they can't relate. To the rest of us, no. What? Yeah, they don't exist. Okay, so that's where we're going to be heading toward. So tonight's teaching is going to say something the exact opposite of what I say around here all the time for the last few years. Literally the exact opposite of what I say. And so instead of me having a fight or flight response, I simply say, let's see if it's true. If it's true, let's adjust. So here we are on guess what week? In 3 seconds, say what week it is. 1, 2, 3. 7. You guys signed up for an 8-week marriage course. That is amazing. And you guys have been so faithful. I can't even believe it. In undergrad, they said, hey, if you want people to sign up for a 12-week discipleship course, make it 6 and then offer another 6 at the end of the 6. No one's going to sign up for a 12-week course. I was like, how many weeks was a semester of college? Wasn't it usually 14? Okay, here we go. Church isn't supposed to be college. You know, people come to church and watch YouTube videos for one of two reasons, one or two or both, for information, knowledge, or learning, or for an experience. And we're trying to do both tonight. So here we go. I want you to check out these questions and do a quick review with your spouse. How might I be crossing your boundaries? Do you feel I respect your right to say no to me? Do I give you guilt messages, withdrawal, or attack when you set a limit? Will you let me know the next time I don't respect your freedom? We've already done these. I just want to do a quick review. These are healthy questions to ask. And we're going to see why in that last point. But actually, the 2 questions are super simple, and I want you to spend the next 5 minutes on are these 2. We're going to need some music. This is way too intimate in a group, okay? So I want you to think about this like the idea of conflict is going to happen. Conflict is an opportunity. Conflict always means we need communication, but healthy communication, not dysfunctional, toxic communication. So if we have healthy communication, it's going to bring us closer together. These are some great questions we should be able to ask and not have a fight or flight response. You're having a fight or flight response when you are interpreting whatever phenomena your spouse has given you as indicative of your shame. So there's a sense in which fight or flight response is often a shame response, is the way I like to look at it. So if we realize that, was like, hey, I don't have to respond that way. I can do something different. 5 minutes. You got any music? How was that? You can keep going. What's that on your arm? So is that good? Were there conversations happening? I feel like you guys could keep going. Most of y'all could keep going with that. So that was really good. Now, some of those times, they're not the most fun conversations sometimes, are they? You could probably think of something more fun to do. But without those kind of conversations, we do not stay connected. That's where we're going to end up tonight at the end, okay? So, really important. And he's going to go on to say that date nights without conversations like this don't function. They don't work. So, here we go, week 7. Start off with the story. 23-year anniversary was approaching. Denise would think about the years of marriage to her husband, Roy, as that day grew near. As she would become sad. She would become sad as she thought about what happened to their union over the years. It had become less of a union than a warehouse for lots of activities and interests. So many things had come into their lives, many of them good. Children, careers, friends, church. But the couple's relationship revolved more around things and people than each other. Within her busy and fulfilling life, Denise often felt lonely and detached. So we have an opportunity here before us to talk about third parties. Third parties, intruders into the relationship. Intruders. My dad growing up as a Star Trek fan, he would always say, intruder alert, intruder alert. That's a Star Trek thing, right? Come on. There's not one Trekkie in here? Intruder alert. So that's a good thing to say, okay? It's a kind of a military thing. We look scan the horizon. Oh, there's an intruder. So it's two shall become one. It's not two shall become, can become 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It's this oneness. And so sometimes, even in marriage vows, people are leaving out this idea of forsaking all others because it's not a thing. And, if you're writing up your marriage vows, you think, okay, based on how I feel right now, we don't need to cover that. The problem is you're going to get comfortable with each other, and those positive emotions are going to dissipate, which is why you need a covenant in place. Okay, so intruder alert. Even good things can be intruders. Children, careers, friends, church. So it hadn't always been that way. During the first few years of the relationship, she and Roy had talked for hours. They had been deeply involved in each other's joys, hurts, and hearts. She thought she had found the soulmate she had prayed for all her life. But as parenting, work, life had taken more of their time and energy, interpersonal involvement had waned. In other words, they're drifting. They're no longer having those emotional connections. In order to have those emotional connections, we do have to talk about joys, hurts, and our hearts. Like hearts meaning, here's how I feel about these things going on. Joys, spectrum, and hurts, pain, sorrows, like talking those through with your spouse is how we stay connected in large part. It wasn't what many couples report as a normal settling down of intensity as time goes on. That's normal. It was more that she felt that they were not close, except when other people and things were in the room. For Denise, this anniversary was a sad memorial to a seemingly full life that contained a great deal of inexplicable emptiness. The marriage union itself needs to be actively protected. God designed both spouses to invest continually in their attachment to each other. Couples need to work to keep their love secure and safe. Many things compete for your love, as we will see in this section. I want to say that part again. God designed both spouses to invest continually in their attachment to each other. This is, to me, again, I'm just going to say this. It reminds us the idea that we come to, at least once a week, come into corporate worship to maintain our relationship with God. It's one of the expressions of that. Imagine you got, saved and baptized when you were a kid, went to a church a few times, but then you never went back to church. What would we say your relationship with God is like? So if your relationship with God takes intentionality, it's also true that, like that, takes intentionality to have a relationship with your spouse. There's a lot of similarities there. You're not going to have much of a relationship if you're drifting, like you check in every once in a while. You have to maintain that emotional connection. So, you cannot assume that the strong connection you had when you first married will always just be there. That's worth the whole study right there. You cannot assume that the strong connection you had when you first married will always just be there. Other forces can come between you and your mate and diminish your relationship, as Jesus taught. God himself has forged your marriage. Therefore, what God has joined together, let man not separate. Mark 10:9. As a bank guards its money, each spouse must guard and protect the core of the marriage, love. Great analogy. Marriage requires several kinds of boundaries to survive. We need to set limits on our individual needs, desires, and demands. We need to set limits on our individual needs, desires, and demands. We need to say no to our spouses. I don't know why that sentence is there. And we also need to have boundaries between the marriage and the outside world to preserve what we have. The outside world deeply affects how a marriage operates. The pressures, temptations, and even genuinely good opportunities coming from the outside world are limitless. As stewards of the marriage covenant, you need to know how to structure your relationship so that the outside world doesn't control what is inside. Here are some intruders that can weaken the marital bond. So, good is the enemy of best. Here's the intruders. Work, kids, outside hobbies and interests, TV, in-laws, church, internet, financial involvement, friends, addictions, affairs. Most of these items aren't bad in and of themselves, yet when they come in between a couple's love, they can be destructive. You will need to work to protect your marriage. Before we talk in more detail about these intruders, we need to discuss what drives the problem of intruders in the first place. So if there's a sequence, a causal chain, A plus B equals C plus... It doesn't start out... These intruders don't become a threat. It's not the beginning of the causal chain, usually. A marriage is only as strong as what it costs to protect it. In other words, you value what you invest in. If you have spent time, effort, and sacrifice in preserving your marriage from other influences, your odds of a solid marriage are better. If life has just happened to your marriage, you will have a more fragile bond. Like the man who sold all he had for the pearl of great price, those who value the preciousness of their marriage will pay a high price to preserve it. So, question, why 2, not 3? Marriage is an exclusive club. Marriage is a two-person arrangement, leaving out all other parties. This is why wedding vows often include the phrase, forsaking all others. Marriage is meant to be a safe place for one's soul. That's a critical statement, as we'll see. Marriage is meant to be a safe place for one's soul. Third parties can become disruptive to this safety. How safe do you feel to reveal the depths of your soul if there's an intruder? This seems like is more important to your spouse than you are. So he brings us this idea of triangulation. Our love often gets segmented into other places. This problem, called triangulation, is one of the great enemies of good marriages. Triangulation occurs when one spouse brings in a third party for an unhealthy reason. Third party, unhealthy reason, not third party, healthy reason, like therapy or counseling. A triangle is created when, for example, a wife, person A, goes to a friend, person C, for something she should go to her husband, person B, for. Or in a family setting, a sibling, person A, calls you, person C, to talk about mom's problem without first talking to mom, person B. Here are some examples of triangulation that occur in marriage. You ready for this? This is good. A wife talks to her best friend about her unhappiness with her husband, but doesn't let him know her feelings. A husband confides to his secretary that his wife doesn't understand him. That husband, oh my goodness. What a terrible mistake. Lacking in intelligence and wisdom there. One spouse makes their child a confidant, becoming closer to the child than to her mate, which is not good for the child. It's called surrogate spouse. Look it up. It's not good. A husband is more interested in his parents than in his wife. These are bad. Okay? In all these examples, a spouse is taking part of his heart. This is how we get the essential property of why this is a triangulation, intruder. Taking part of your heart, this is also would be part of a definition of an emotional affair. Taking part of your heart away from your spouse and bringing it to an outside source. Are we cool with that? I can have a best friend of the opposite sex. It's no big deal. I'm taking part of my heart and bringing it to an outside source. That is a major problem. You are asking to say, hey, I would not like to stay married very long. Or I would like to be in a marriage that is a nightmare. That is very painful. This is not only painful, but I love this word, it's unjust. Do you remember what we've been saying and what justice is? It works against what God intended to develop in marriage, the mysterious unity that brings the couple closer to each other in ever-deepening ways. Triangulation betrays trust and fractures the union. So we could say justice is the way that God intended things to be. Which is why justice shows up on the day of judgment, day of God's wrath. He's making all things right. He's putting all things right as the creator covenant God. In all these examples, this is why God is so adamant about honest, direct relationships. Honest, direct. Not deceptive, indirect, or passive. He hates the deception and indirectness of triangulation. Gossip